Jewelry doesn't always have to be that smooth, shiny, mirror finish piece that glistens from across the room. Texturing is such an exciting addition to your jewelry. Texturing adds visual interest, character, depth, and contrasting details to your jewelry projects. The question is, how do I texture? Because I don't have the set of texture hammers, texture stamps, a flexible shaft, an expensive rolling mill, or hydraulic press. Help is on the way. I'm Greenwood, and welcome to my studio. Using texturing as an integral part of your design does not have to be complicated with special texturing tools that many of us may not have. You have access to a free supply of tools and textures. And it's only a few feet from you right now. What? Where? Your junk drawer. All of us have a junk drawer in our homes. Let's explore one and see what's in there. Okay, let's see what we have here. Well, we have some Phillips screwdrivers here. They got some nice tips on them. Maybe we could use those for a punch or something. Well, here's a variety of nails. Maybe we could use those. They got some interesting ends on them. We could lay them on different sides or straight in. Here's some old pliers. Haven't seen those for quite a long time. We got some nice texture on the handle here. Kind of neat. Maybe we could use that. Get some texture. Here's an old saw blade. I'm not exactly sure how we could use that. We could hammer on one side of it or make some texture with it. We'll take a look at that. So, what is this? I'm not exactly sure. This looks like an old bolt here that has an anchor system of some sort on it. These little anchor things have some neat texture. See if you can see that. Maybe we could use those for texture, or maybe even the threads. But here's another bolt that maybe we can just use the threads on this one. Here's an old little wrench that came with a piece of furniture I was putting together. It's kind of got some nice ends to it, little hexes on the ends. Maybe we'd use those. Kind of neat. What else we have here? Let's see. How about some paper clips? Paper clips, we could lay it down on metal and hammer down on it. Might be interesting. I'm not exactly sure how this got in here, but this is some sanding screen for drywall. So there's lots of stuff in here. I'll go through this and see if there is anything else that we could use, and then we'll get texturing. Now that we have our treasure finds from the junk drawer, let's see how they'll make texture. The way that I have this set up is I have a sandbag with my bench block on top of that, and then I've taken a sheet of copper and annealed it. And just to remind you, the annealing process is heating it up with a torch up to a dull cherry red color, which makes the metal soft. And this will help with the texture. Because the metal is softer, the textures will go into it easily. Then I've laid it out on the bench block, put a piece of masking tape along here, and that's simply to help hold it in position. I'm going to take and put different textures in each one of the sections here, and I'll show you how I'm making those textures, and I'm not going to take up your time and do the entire surface of those rectangles. I'll do that a little bit later, and then we can see at the end of the video what they look like with the entire surface textured. Here's our bolt. I'm going to simply hammer it down and roll it. Here's our finishing nail. It's kind of got an interesting head on it. We'll use that for a texture. Let's see what that looks like. Here's another nail with a broader head on it. Let's see what that looks like. When it's laying flat, it doesn't seem to give much texture, so let's tilt it a little bit. Try it on its edge. Ah, that's more interesting. Here's that bolt with that anchoring system on it. Let's see, we'll pull this off. And we'll use the textured anchor. And let's see how that turns out. Oh, that's cool. Just overlapping them. Here's our little Allen wrench for putting the furniture together. Put that on the end and give it some taps. That gives kind of a nice honeycomb texture. Let's try our paper clip. And remember, a paper clip is made out of wire, so you could change the shape of this with a pair of pliers too. Paper clip is really nice and firm metal, so it should make an interesting impression here. Yeah, that's wild and crazy. Again, you can change the shape of that wire to make it more interesting too. I've been waiting to see what kind of texture this will make. It's got some interesting jagged teeth along the edge. Let's lay it down flat and then we'll tilt it slightly forward and see if we can get some of those edges of those teeth to make some neat textures. Actually, the end of the saw blade is making some interesting textures, but there's some real subtle marks from the teeth. Not real successful, but let's use the rest of the blade and make a kind of that cool texture there. Here's our drywall mesh, and let's put that on there and we'll give it a few taps with the hammer and see what happens. There's a real nice subtle sandy little squares in there. I've been curious to see how this old plier handle texture will make a texture on the copper. This would be fun. Ooh, neat. Just overlap those. Yeah, that's really cool. Very interesting. The Phillips screwdriver at the very point has a little square with these little angles coming out of it. I'm not sure whether we'll be able to get those angles coming on out in the texture, but let's see what happens here. Just kind of gives some nice squares there, but just gave me an idea that we could take and run the end of the screwdriver right through the metal, and that might make an interesting texture. Let's finish this one out just from the top, and then I'll try another one that has gone through it, and let's see what those textures look like. I've switched from the bench block to a wooden block, so when I hammer the screwdriver through the metal, obviously with the bench block it wouldn't go through, but with the wood it will. Let's give this a whirl. That is a real heavy texture, and you can see that it has little X's in the bottom of the holes. Let's try the next one over, and we'll try a smaller Phillips screwdriver and see what that looks like. That gives us some little X's in here too, and that gives me an idea. Maybe we can take and put this on the bench block and hammer it down flat and see what that texture looks like. Oh, that's kind of interesting. That kind of closes up the holes and then leaves little X's there. Let's look what the back looks like. Always check the back of your pieces too, because sometimes the texture will come through on the back and leaves an interesting look. Experiment with it. Don't be afraid to try different things. I'm going to hammer a little bit more on these and play around with it, and then we'll take a look at our entire junk drawer collection. Wow, did those textures turn out nice. Remember, these are not store-bought texture hammers or stamps. These are freebies that you have laying around your home, just waiting for you to use. The textures that you invent will be unique to you and will become part of your own style of designer craftsman jewelry. Don't be held back by not having the latest and greatest tools. You don't need to copy everyone else. Greatness comes from being creative. Search the junk drawers of your mind. You will discover the creativity that you are looking for. I hope that you've enjoyed this texturing video and that you've gotten some new and exciting ideas for your own jewelry projects. You don't always have to depend on those store-bought pieces for texturing. Yeah, as you can see, we've checked around in our junk drawers and got really cool results from ordinary objects. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other videos on my channel. I'm Greg Greenwood, and I'll see you next time.